Chapter 9. The Fortress of the Lost Gold, near Mount Malingdang. The dawn broke to shine light over the mountain. The only sounds of the jungle were the distant birds and the slashes of the leaves and grass as Jack swung a machete through the dense vegetation. While he appreciated not hiking in the jungle with his full armor and helmet, the rifle on his back, battle belt, and small day pack was starting to become more cumbersome with each mile into the dense foliage. Maria, who was directly behind Jack, studied the GPS and the map as a navigator. The two traversed along the side of the mountain, at this point far from any civilization. Even the sun was struggling to get through the jungle's canopy and onto the forest floor. Jack took a curiosity to the evidence Maria presented the night before of a hidden relic with supernatural abilities being hidden in a jungle bunker. He grew up and fell in love with pulp adventure books, video games, and films, but always thought that they were fantasy. He was still skeptical about the whole journey that Maria invited him on, yet he wanted to see if her intense conviction would lead to something bewildering. He continued to hack away at the vines and brush, sweating in the morning Philippine sun. Maria seemed unbothered by the fact that Jack was solely putting in the physical exertion to cut through the thick vines and oppressive bushes, but when he wasn't looking, she'd steal a few glances at the sweat going through his blue safari shirt and onto his exposed forearms and chest, while allowing herself to bite her lip. "Hold on, jarhead," Maria held Jack's shoulder. "It's supposed to be right here?" Maria said as she dropped the map to look around. They found themselves on the side of the mountain, surrounded by towering trees and facing a steep incline. This slope was covered in lush emerald green moss, with interwoven vines creating a dense undergrowth. "So, where's this bunker?" Jack skeptically asked. "Did you get something wrong?" "I did not get it wrong," Maria said with frustration. She searched intently around the area, examining every tree and bush, looking for any possible clues. Jack was disappointed, yet thought he could take the time to actually talk to Maria about his feelings for her. Maybe he could turn her disappointment into something charming. "Hey, Maria, Jack started to talk. "Cement!" Maria cried. Jack continued to be confused. What are you talking about?" Jack asked. She motioned for him to come over, and Jack ran up the incline to meet her. She uncovered a small portion of what could have been a large cement frame for the top of the entrance of the bunker. Her eyes widened and she giggled, a far cry from the calm, cool, and collected personality she used to advertise. She then reached into her pack. "How the hell are we going to get into there?" Jack asked. "With this." Maria pulled a grenade from the pack. Jack was shocked, mainly because grenades were serialized gear, and if one went missing, he would be in deep trouble. "Is that ours?" Jack asked. "No, jarhead. I got this from the market," Maria explained. Jack was not sure about that answer. "The market?" he tested. "Yes. I can even tell you the woman that sold it to me. Just shut up and trust me," Maria retorted. Jack's list of questions increased after that answer. She placed the grenade deep into the dirt, pulled the pin, and the pair sprinted down the hill and ducked for cover. The blast sent a shockwave through their bodies, but Jack was more worried about the noise it made. The security contractors and archaeologists would no doubt be on high alert. The blast left a hole, obscured by the dust, no more than 2 feet in diameter. Using his rifle's mounted white light, Jack went to inspect the hole in the side of the mountain with Maria. They noticed it spanned around 12 feet deep into the mountain before opening up into a larger space. "Well, here we go," Jack said, buying into Maria's mission and getting down to crawl through the space. Jack started to get excited about what lay ahead, but he also had a job to do, and right now that was protecting Maria from any danger she might get into inside the bunker. As he crawled through the dusty passage, the fine dust gradually transformed into cobwebs, creating a sense of tight confinement as his large body was enveloped from all sides. Claustrophobia began to take hold, but he suppressed his anxiety by shutting his eyes and persevering, inching forward until he reached the hole's end with his rifle extended in front of him. Suddenly, The opening broadened, revealing a pitch-black hallway beneath. He tumbled headfirst into the dark abyss, landing on the floor. The force of the fall caused him to lose his grip on his rifle. He reached for his weapon, pointing its light into the ominous darkness. As he heard the shifting of the rock and dirt behind him as Maria was crawling through the hole, he went through his bag to find a short, slender, cylindrical item. It was a chemical light. He snapped the glass inside the tube, and a bright yellow glow illuminated the cavernous bunker. The wind whistled deep in the bowels of the bunker as insects crawled along the vine-laden walls. Jack had a sinking, eerie feeling, like this bunker may be his tomb. Maria's petite and slender physique allowed her to pass through the hole with ease. After her descent, she brushed the dust off her clothes and activated the right-angle light attached to her belt. Jack, in the meantime, placed a chemical light on the ground to mark their point of entry, and affixed one to himself as well as one to Maria as a precaution in case of emergencies. "Careful, Jarhead. Yamashita has been known for booby-trapping his caches of treasure," Maria recalled. Jack was skeptical that any strategic emplacement like a bunker would have its own traps, but he nodded in acknowledgement. Jack led the way with his rifle at the low ready, his mounted light guiding further into the long-forgotten bunker. "My hero," Maria said sarcastically, and then followed him. The pair cautiously made their way through the passage. Maria looked ahead for any sign of where they should go, while Jack combed the ground with his light to detect any tripwire or other indications of possible booby traps. "Hold," Jack ordered, raising his hand into a fist that nearly hit Maria behind him. "Aye aye, G.I. Joe," Maria responded. What Jack had spotted was the unusual gathering of vines and dead leaves crowding around a section of the floor. Granted, there were dead leaves and vines throughout the bunker, yet they were scattered. This grouping of vegetation seemed like somebody placed it there for a reason. "The floor may be false," Jack stated. "You sure?" Maria inquired. Jack focused his gaze with great intensity, scrutinizing their surroundings for any signs of a trap. Meanwhile, Maria, seizing the moment, grabbed a sturdy rock from the decaying cement nearby and flung it into the overgrown vegetation. As the rock collided with the thick foliage, the plants yielded to the force, revealing a menacing and gaping pit concealed beneath. At the bottom of this abyss lay a network of cruelly barbed spikes. The chasm proved to be much too distant for either of them to make a simple leap across. "Well, shit. What do we do now?" Maria asked. Jack had an idea. The vines were dug into the walls on either side, a commodity the architects of this death bunker did not realize would overtake the walls after more than a few decades. Jack scanned the wall for a cluster of larger vines situated at the top, and he gave them a firm tug. These vines were connected to an anchor point, which, fortunately, happened to be a hole positioned in the center of the wall, directly between the pit. Jack securely fastened his chemical light to his pack and hurled it to the opposite side to both lighten his load and illuminate that area. Afterward, he swung along the sides of the wall, using his feet to propel him across the wall and partially alleviate his weight on the vine. Finally, he reached the far end and leapt to the other side, landing with a noticeable thud on the ground. Maria watched on, slightly impressed. "Okay, Jarhead, you know how to use your noggin," Maria joked. "Your turn," Jack replied with a slight laugh of disbelief. I got a better way," she smiled. Maria retreated a few paces, preparing for a sprint. As she surged toward the side of the wall, she launched herself into a daring leap. Her feet found purchase against the wall in a calculated motion, creating the necessary lift to carry her safely over the treacherous chasm. She was wall running, a popular but difficult move in parkour. However, Maria's exhilarating run on the wall took a sudden and perilous turn. When she attempted her final foot placement, her hiking boot caught in the tangled vines, causing her to stumble forward. The edge of the pit struck her chest with force, and she teetered precariously. Desperate to avoid a potentially catastrophic fall, she tried to secure a grip on the ledge, but her fingers found no purchase. Fear surged through her as she began to plummet toward the pit, barbed spikes waiting ominously below. Then, in the nick of time, she felt a powerful yank on her arm. Jack had made a fearless dive to seize her, his strong grip preventing her from a potentially fatal descent, but leaving her hanging precariously above the menacing barbed spikes. With all of his strength, Jack was able to pull her back up to the other side. "Do that one more time, and we are done. I will expose what you are doing, and we are through," Jack said with a fit of serious anger. Jack's emotional reaction wasn't driven by anger. It was a result of a mixture of protective instincts and personal feelings that welled up inside him. "I'm sorry. I swear," Maria said sheepishly. Jack dusted her off and made sure she was okay. "I'm fine. Only my ego is injured. But thank you," Maria replied earnestly. The two adventurers pressed forward, deeper into the bunker. As they advanced, the rugged, overgrown surroundings gave way to a different environment. A chilling, metallic space veiled in cobwebs. The narrow hallway eventually opened up into a more spacious room. Within, they found decaying wooden desks and dusty metal structures, once the hubs of radio communication that connected people all over the island. Opposite them stood two imposing metal doors, shrouded in a layer of rust and time. "This looks like a Japanese command center," Jack noticed. "Yeah, but the other side of the door is probably where we need to be going," Maria insisted. They both took a look at the doors. The large iron slabs wouldn't budge, but there wasn't any sign of a lock holding them together. "It must be electronic," Maria gasped. The two looked around the room to find out where the button for the lock would be. Maria looked under the desks while Jack looked curiously around the walls and eventually the radio cabinet. "Hey, Maria, any chance it could be this?" Jack called. "What gives it away?" Maria asked as she walked to him. "The fact there's a radio here, yet your team has never unearthed any signs of a radio tower around the mountain," Jack replied. The two looked at the radio. The robust and bulky contraption had a headset plugged in with 4 dials in a succession of each other. Western numerals were written in tiny prints around the dials. "It could be a combination lock," Jack suggested. "No shit, Sherlock, but what is the combination?" Maria said, annoyed that Jack found a clue before her. The two continued to look around, searching for a possible combination of numbers. Then Maria had an idea. "Hey, Jack, try these numbers," Maria said, looking into her backpack for the manifest she recovered. She realized that the 4 numbers at the end of the message might not have been oddities. "Try 0, 8, 1, 9, she read aloud. Jack turned the dials to meet the numbers, yet there was no movement from the door. "Well, damn," Maria said in frustration. She continued to look around while Jack noticed the headset. "Perhaps I have to speak into this as well," Jack thought. He donned the headset over his ears. He thought of a passcode in Japanese. "Kudasai," or please, Jack tried, remembering the Japanese he picked up while in Okinawa. "What are you doing?" Maria asked. "Ima," or now, Jack continued. "Maybe there's a code phrase," he replied to Maria's question. "Onegaishimasu," or "do me a favor." "It wouldn't be that simple." She looked back at the manifest. The header said, in hiragana Japanese, Imperial Japanese Navy. Underneath was a quote, "Hako Ichiu," or "All the world under one roof," the slogan of Imperial Japan. "Hey, Jack, try Hako Ichiu," Maria said, dropping the jarhead nickname. Jack caught on and did his best to pronounce it. Hako Ichiu. The heavy metal doors swung open with a resonant clang, and a rush of chilly wind swept through the room, extinguishing both Jack and Maria's lights. They were plunged into darkness, unable to rekindle their electric or chemical illumination. It felt as though they were isolated in a void of inky blackness. A disconcerting sensation enveloped Jack, as if some spectral entities were lurking behind and all around him. It was as if whispering voices urged him to turn back. "Maria, you okay?" Jack yelled. "Yeah, I'm right here. I'm fine. I could have sworn I put in fresh batteries," Maria answered. Luckily for the two of them, Jack had packed one last chemical light. As Jack felt around in his daypack for the last chem light, he could feel what he thought was Maria's presence encroaching behind him. However, when Jack activated the chemical light, the room illuminated once more, revealing that Maria was now positioned on the opposite side of the room. Jack glanced around in confusion, and then, almost miraculously, their electric lights sputtered back to life. The eerie sense of lurking figures that had haunted them just moments ago dissolved into the darkness. Yet, the unsettling presence still lingered in the air, sending shivers down their spines. "You okay, Jack?" Maria asked, as scared as he was. "Yeah, all good. Let's go," Jack said, trying to get his bearings. The scenery of the bunker changed drastically when Jack and Maria stepped through the metal doors. Instead of the normal rustic edges of a military bunker, lay a sizable cave. Sunlight was pouring through a 3-foot-wide hole through the highest part of the cave, which was around 40 feet. Water was pouring through the hole and down into a deep pit that neither Maria nor Jack could see the end of. Along the edge of the cave lay a natural walkway that led across the side of the cavern. Waiting for them on the other side of the cave looked like a door to a traditional Japanese temple, complete with the swooping, overarching roof made of tile, redwood to support the beams, and an ornate metal door with kanji inscriptions. As they carefully approached the steps leading to the temple's entrance, an indescribable sensation of foreboding began to grip Jack. It was as though the very air around him grew heavy with an ominous presence, and this disquieting feeling only seemed to intensify with each step that brought them closer to the temple's formidable facade. This wasn't merely the usual trepidation that accompanied venturing into the unknown. It was a profound sense of impending doom that left an icy chill running down his spine. When they finally pushed open the massive temple doors, they were met with a sight that added to the aura of enigma that shrouded this place. Before them stretched a solitary passageway, its wooden walls bathed in a soft, flickering light. The floor was crafted from sleek, dark wood, providing a sharp contrast to the rest of the environment. All along the sides, the corridor seemed to whisper tales of history and secrets, its walls marked with an age-old patina. However, it was the far end of the corridor that drew their attention most. There, they beheld an imposing steel hatch door, a fixture most commonly found on seafaring vessels or within the secure confines of bank vaults. "The treasure must be on the other side," Maria announced. Jack heard rumblings coming from the walls, and before Maria could step into the hallway, Jack yanked her back. "Hey, what the?" Maria tried to say. "Be quiet," Jack whispered. "Most Japanese castles have a bunch of mats known as nightingale floors. I've seen them before. If this is supposed to be like a real Japanese temple, then this might be a trap. Follow me and be careful." Maria marveled at his knowledge, and Jack silently congratulated himself for that long weekend he'd taken in Okinawa while serving in the Marines, where he'd explored the castles of Kyoto, Japan. The nightingale floor was designed with sections that emitted loud creaks if stepped upon, a feature caused by two pieces of metal rubbing together beneath the floorboards. Jack got down on all fours, spreading his weight around and gently gliding his hand over the floor. If he found a creak, he would call it out to Maria, who was ordered to follow his every move. They moved as slowly and quietly as they could. As hard as they tried, the squeaks of the floorboard catalyzed more movement from behind the walls. Jack couldn't guess what would happen if the noise was too much. All he could do was pray that he didn't experience what would happen. As they reached the end of the hallway, the wood floor turned to stone right before the heavy metal hatch. Jack and Maria stood up carefully so as not to set off the trap behind them. Jack grasped the handle and gently unlocked it. As he moved the door away, Maria walked inside. Jack quickly followed her in, but she stopped short of the entrance to the next chamber. Maria and Jack stood in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on the grotesque sight that greeted them. Before them lay a gruesome heap of decaying corpses. The uniforms and tattered clothes on the lifeless forms suggested a grim mix of Imperial Army soldiers and peasant laborers who had likely been involved in the construction of the bunker. The vault door that barricaded them bore haunting evidence of their desperate plight. Long, dried bloodstains and desperate scratch marks etched into the surface of the door and even into the walls around them. The scratch marks and blood spoke of a frantic struggle in their final moments, an urgency born from something within the chamber itself, something that had driven them to utter desperation. Cautiously, they began navigating their way through the gruesome scene, their nostrils assaulted by the nauseating stench of decaying flesh. Jack approached one of the wooden crates, his curiosity driving him to investigate further. With a firm kick, the crate's lid gave way, revealing brilliantly bright gold bullions, each stamped with the unmistakable seal of Imperial Japan. It was a discovery that sent shivers down their spines, for they now realized the magnitude of what they had uncovered. "We did it," Jack said, looking with disbelief into Maria's eyes. "Almost, Jarhead." Maria was still focused on searching the room. "We still need to find Trishula." "Wait, what's this?" Jack noticed as he searched the far end of the room through the corpses and gold. A lone dead Imperial soldier lay away from the rest of the bodies. "Look, there's a hole in his skull, yet we didn't see any weapons on the others." Maria continued to investigate. In the soldier's hands lay a crumpled up journal entry. Maria took it from the body and examined it. "Do you know what it says?" Jack asked. "I don't know yet, but we can take this back to base camp," Maria answered. "Have you found anything of Hindu descent?" Jack looked around, but all he saw or cared about was the boxes of pure gold held within the room. "No, nothing that ancient or scary here, but I think we are set for life," Jack said about the millions of dollars of gold in stacked boxes around him. "Very funny, but this must be returned to the governments of those suffered under the Imperials for reparations," Maria argued. Jack rolled his eyes jokingly. He knew what his mission was, but was anyone going to miss a single brick of gold in a room filled to the top with the stuff? He continued to kick more boxes open. However, in the admiration of treasure, he got careless. Jack Carter felt a tile depress into the floor under his feet. As soon as he took his foot off of the tile, Jack and Maria noticed an opening of ventilation shafts from the sides of the room. They couldn't see much, but Jack and Maria heard the release of pressure from the vents. Jack figured that something was being pumped into the chamber, but couldn't figure out what. "What does it smell like? Bitter almonds?" Maria asked. Jack struggled to recall, but he felt dizzy and his vision was blurring. Then he realized. "It's cyanide! We need to get out of here," Jack ordered. Maria tucked the paper into her pocket, and the two dashed out of the chamber, tripping and falling back onto the wooden nightingale floor with a loud and ominous creak. Beneath the deceptive nightingale floor lay an intricate mechanism ingeniously devised to safeguard the secrets hidden within the temple. This mechanism was connected to the Japanese Type 92 heavy machine guns concealed on the opposite side of the chamber's walls. As the creak sounded, a hail of machine gun fire erupted through the walls, the bullets mercilessly tearing through the ancient wood. The deafening noise filled the chamber, and Jack and Maria had no choice but to react swiftly. They darted out of the hallway, their hearts pounding, their instincts driving them towards safety. The gunfire continued, systematically ripping apart the wooden panels in their wake. Emerging from the perilous underground temple, Jack and Maria were greeted by a nerve-wracking sight. The massive, heavy doors at the far end of the cave were slowly beginning to seal themselves shut once more, closing off their escape route. Gasping for breath, Jack and Maria managed to slip through the doors just in the nick of time, narrowly escaping the deadly embrace of the temple's perilous mechanism. The relief that washed over them was palpable as they paused for a brief moment, lungs heaving with each breath. "Well, damn, that was close," Maria claimed, starting to break into a laugh with Jack. The smiles were quickly taken away when they realized the command room also had vents that opened. "Looks like you spoke too soon," Jack replied as they both continued to sprint out of the room. As they reached the edge of the pit, Maria swiftly leapt towards the vine that Jack had used earlier, successfully swinging herself back to the other side. However, her landing proved to be the vine's downfall, as it snapped under the stress of her swing. This left Jack with no choice but to consider the risky wall run. With determination in his eyes, Jack took a running start. Fortunately, the walls were still enveloped in vines, which offered temporary footholds for his daring endeavor. He executed the wall run with precision, placing his feet carefully to generate the necessary lift to propel him safely to the other side of the pit. He landed with a resounding thud next to Maria. Sprinting, Jack and Maria reached the chem light, indicating the entrance of the bunker. "Go!" Jack yelled in desperation as he cupped his hands under Maria's foot to help her climb out of the hole they came in from. When she got through, it was Jack's turn. The pungent smell of almonds was increasing, meaning the gas was seeping out to fill the entire bunker. Jack scurried into the hole. The fumes were making him dizzy and weak. Every movement was a battle to get to the light and its fresh air. If he let his weakness triumph here, he thought, he would be done forever. As he saw Maria get through, he felt relieved that she was okay, but the effects of the poison gas were getting to him. He fought with every muscle in his body to get through the hole, yet his body ached to give up. He reached into his shirt to pull out the cross Andre had given him. If he needed divine strength at any point, this was the time. He continued to crawl through the increasingly airless burrow with the cross tightly held in his hand. Jack's head flared with intense pain. His movements were slowed and his body had become lethargic. All he could do was move and think, "I am not going to die here." After a relentless struggle, he managed to extend his arm beyond the hole's opening, desperate for fresh air. But the exposure to the gas had taken a heavy toll on him. His vision grew hazy, his movement slowed, and his body, overcome with fatigue, finally gave in. His face met the dirt at the edge of the hole, and the darkness closed in. The dirt slid across his face as he felt someone grab his arm from outside of the hole. It was too strong of a grip to be Maria's. As the fresh air poured into his lungs, he gently returned to consciousness. He felt someone's fingers on his neck and then his wrist, checking for a pulse. "His radial is weak and thready. Let's take him back to put in some O2 and an IV." Jack recognized Carlos's voice. Jack's eyes opened, but his body was too weak. He could see, while blurry, a large grouping of archaeologists crowding around, along with contractors pulling security around the area. Once he felt Carlos and Sal load him onto a stretcher, he passed out again.